A bit of a warning, this video might come out as quite negative. So don't worry, the lore is not dying. And of course, please don't go after any specific writers. The writers are really awesome, they just have to deal with what comes from above, and the designers make interesting looking champions with the toolkit that they have. And when it comes to the recent stuff, Vex is awesome and Pentakill is badass. So please, take this video with a pinch of salt. Well, I didn't think I would be making this video so soon. Today I will go mostly without a script because a couple of days ago we learned about something new. A few days ago we got a tweet from Matt Dunn. He was one of the best writers at Riot Games and you may know him for the lore of someone like Ornn, Pyke or Kindred. There is truly no doubt he was really good. And unfortunately he left Riot Games in May, but we didn't really know why. Well, in this tweet we did learn that the circumstances were quite horrifying. That alone would deserve a video on its own. But for this channel specifically, more importantly, he mentioned that by the higher-ups, the narrative of League of Legends was and is seen as disposable. Now, normally I would not freak out about this. If you really look at this objectively, this could be just a statement of someone who does not work at Riot Games anymore. That is, if you ignore the horrifying circumstances. But the reason why for me it is really concerning is because this is not the first time I have heard this. Granted, we are going to talk about people on the internet, on what could be questionable websites, but they are still people and maybe we shouldn't dismiss that. From them, I heard this exact same thing. After the Ruination was a major flop, apparently inside Riot Games there's been a lot of talking. And it seems like the writers are really frustrated because they are not getting the attention they should be getting. And what's worse, it seems like the narrative direction which we got now will stay the same for quite some time until things change. At least those are the rumors. But now that we are publicly hearing the exact same thing again, I might now trust the first source even more. And before you try asking me questions in my DMs, no, I don't really know anything else. All I know is that apparently the writers are frustrated too. And it is likely because they have to follow the orders of the product managers. So let's talk about the disposable lore argument. Even though this is not a quote of anyone at Riot Games, let's pretend it is. Disposable lore, my ass. If this is really what the higher-ups think, fire them immediately. Do they even know what the game is about? You know the one thing that Riot Games is trying to sell? The champions? People wouldn't care about the champions if it wasn't for their lore. But know that that is different from caring about the lore. Like 90% of League's players don't know that Udyr has one of the best stories in the entire game. But everyone knows that Annie's parents are dead. That's the difference between the lore and Champions lore. Most people don't read all the extra color stories on Universe, but most people get to know the story of the characters through the game. Believe it or not, dear higher-ups, those champions have characters which are written by the writers. And really, people wouldn't give two shits about champions like Yone or Jhin if they didn't have their own story. Jhin is one of the most praised champions in the game because everyone knows that he's a mass murderer. He's not just a random guy with a gun. That is a massive f***ing difference. People don't have to care about Jhin's lore because the game makes sure that people learn about it anyway through the game. But now you may argue, well, we can just give them a little bit of story with a little bit of character and be done with it. Well, guess what? League is not Fortnite. League's IP is set in a world with certain rules. Champions like Sett and Vastaya are only possible because Vastaya are a race in your world. You don't bend the rules of the lore to make something better marketable, but instead, you make something marketable in the world. The world that is properly written and is not disposable. If we really lean into this, Yone was the first a bit iffy champion. He was the first one on whom we could kinda feel that he was forced into the game because people related to the lore, by the way, but they had to bend the lore to get him in. That was highly likely the decision of the higher-ups, because the higher-ups told them that the champions who are already established in the lore are popular. There is this Yone guy, can we shove him in? Oh, he's dead? Well, bend the world, the players won't notice. That's kinda what happened to Yone. Like, the narrative team pulled it off well enough, but you could feel that something didn't feel quite right. What's really scary is that up until the Ruination, Riot's been knocking it out of the park with the stories. Riven's story became iconic, Graga's became really good, Fonyip's story is the best lore released this year, and then there is Leona and Diana. A really good story on its own, but now that we know that the narrative is seen as marketing, was this really a passion project or is this another marketing for the Pride Month? That's what's really happening right now. There are all of these amazing stories, but now we will always see them as a bit of a marketing scheme. Like, this was a really good story, but how much of it was directed by the product managers? Regardless, after all of those amazing stories, that. And speaking of everything being about marketing now, can we talk about how Riot is actually handling their problems? Like, oh, the game is becoming stale and it's not doing that well, players have been playing this game for 10 years and decided to move away? That's a problem and now your game is making less money. You know what you could do about it? Make new game modes and make gameplay more interesting so that people would have something new to come back for? Or sales and marketing? Guess which one is easier to implement? And just like with every other gaming company these days, we get back to the Steve Jobs argument. Every company goes through the exact same cycle, and this is absolutely where Riot is right now. A company has the idea people and the marketing people. At the beginning, the idea people make a brilliant product, something clever and innovative, and it sells because the idea people made it good. But it sells because of the marketing people. Of course, with success, the company wants to sell more, and so they bring in more marketing. And over time, the marketing people start to outweigh the idea people. And suddenly, the company is not led by the people who made it successful at the very beginning with a really good product, but it is led by people who know how to sell stuff, but they have no idea how to make a good product.
So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people, and they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products.
And let me reassure you, Riot's higher-ups, when it comes to new champions, your products are barely fine. You have not had a banger champion release since 2019. I believe Silas was the last champion whom everyone enjoyed. Maybe Yone, but his lore was a bit iffy. But none of that is the designer's fault or the writer's fault. For example, Set's design is awesome and the writers really pushed him as far as they could with those limitations. But you know what they were limited by? Abs. You know what we could have had instead of another Vastayan pretty face boy? These. We could have had a massive Darkin monster. But that wouldn't sell. And you know what's ironic about this? People see the best years of League of Legends as anything between 2014 and 2017. You know why that is? Let me play a clip from Nicky Boy's recent video.
2014, Vel'Koz, Braum, Gnar, Azir, Kalista, Rek'Sai, Bard, Echo, Tahm Kench, Kindred, Alawi, Jhin, Aesol, Talia, Kled, Ivern, Camille. This small time frame was, in my opinion, the golden age of League of Legends champion design.
But he also talks about what's happening now with the champions.
And now that we have Rakan in the game, I wonder what kind of character they'll release next. Oh, another male character intentionally designed for sex appeal, huh? I mean, well, you know, two of the same body type is, I guess, that's fine. You know, it's okay. Hopefully we'll get something different next time. Okay, generically attractive female character. We already have a lot of that from League's early days. You know, maybe next time they'll... Again? Okay, well maybe next... Guys, for real. Can you just, for God's sake, stop! Stop! So now here we are.
12 pretty faces in a row. Are you f***ing serious? By the way, go and watch that video, it was legitimately awesome. But you know what's the funniest about this? Riot is just not done with pretty faces because there is that, and very recently, that. Really? You know why Vex is being praised and why I genuinely believe that she will be a success? She's the first one to not have a pretty face. I mean, yeah, for a Yordle she does have a pretty face, but at least there is the emo twist. But going back to the Disposable Lore argument. Even after people decide to not play League of Legends anymore, they stick around the game for two reasons: esports and lore. If the two things weren't there, once a player leaves, they would have little to no reason to return. That is one of the major reasons why lore matters. I also genuinely believe that the higher-ups were probably surprised by the amount of outrage there was on Reddit after the Ruination. Technically, the Ruination event was fine. On a technical level, it was even better than Spirit Blossom. But people noticed the lore, and that's why people hated it. They hated the story. The story alone was the reason why the event flopped. It wasn't the gameplay. So in your terms, dear higher-ups, let's talk about why it's fine that the lore doesn't matter. Is it because of this? Because if this sucks, you're gonna have a lot on your plates. You can't say the lore doesn't matter while at the same time making an animated series rooted in this universe. If this universe wasn't already properly established, this wouldn't be possible. But that's fine, one series is nothing, we don't need a lore for the entire universe, it's not like we are making an MMO. I can tell you right now, if the lore sucks, people are not going to enjoy the MMO. MMORPGs are about exploring the world. I don't wanna explore a place where someone can rob me and then immediately become a Knight of the Light. But that's fine, we don't need a lore for the entire universe, people are gonna play the MMO for PvP because of esports anyway. So what about the other games? The point of Riot Forge is that indie companies have the ability to make games based in League of Legends so that they can expand the world. The primary focus of the games in Riot Forge is lore, because League of Legends can't push lore on its own. If you start toying with the lore and do whatever you want just to sell skins, suddenly no one's gonna want to play those games. Yeah, sure, a good gameplay can go a really long way, but no one's gonna care about the characters in an RPG game. And you know what's the best about this? How can you say lore doesn't matter when your competitors are doing the exact opposite? The other games are trying to get better at their lore because they know that League of Legends has one of the best fantasy universes in the world. And that's not an understatement. Up until the Ruination, I truly believe that the universe of League of Legends was flawless. I have never seen a more beautiful place. Here I would like to add in an interesting fact. Throughout my YouTube career, I learned that the views on my lore videos directly correlate to how interesting a champion is. Rel, for example, wasn't so mind-blowing. New Fiddlesticks, a totally different story. Recently, Akshan, yeah, people didn't really like him. Yone, people loved his initial release, because he was a pre-established character. So yeah, I want the lore to be good, because it is actually healthy for the channel. But out of all people, I can probably feel it the most when Riot doesn't land something correctly. But yeah, I always thought that the Ruination was a flop, or to use a better dictionary, it was a fucking dumpster fire. But now I realize it was a success. It was obviously marketing the lore and it flopped. Because you can't shove more pretty faces into the lore just to sell more skins. And let other big champions related to the event sit on the bench because they don't have a marketable face. I mean, they do, but you have to make their faces pretty and then take away their heads so that you can see that pretty face. Either way, what happened to Yorick during the Ruination was absolutely irredeemable. So, the Ruination was a success. People lost faith, it was a major blow to the lore, but more importantly, people didn't care about the skins. And so the marketing department saw the outrage in the only language they know. Lost money. So good job, Ruination. I always wondered how League would die, because eventually all games end. Trends shift, over time it becomes more difficult to update the games and people grow up. But I didn't know League could go out this way. A sea of pretty faces and story tailored for marketing. So yeah, in the next video let's talk about Vex and Nami.